Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss at Internet Shitlords. And I suppose that you guys have seen by now, I posted a community post about it, which I hope that you were all able to see. Certainly there were a lot of comments on it, so I'm guessing a lot of people saw it. That apparently Kyle Brink, the now former executive producer at Wizards of the Coast, has either quit or been fired. I'm not making a video about that right now, because we basically don't have any real information. What we do know is that he was probably fired sometime, fired or quit. That he stopped being the VP of Dungeons and Dragons around 2 weeks ago or so, and that this was kept secret until now, which is, I think, common practice in some corporations where they don't want to bring it up until the guy is completely gone and his replacement is completely back or completely in. So yeah, that we know. We don't know if he was fired or if he quit. Either way, Kyle Brink is famous for being the guy who went on a podcast right in the middle of the whole 1D&D scandal, the OGL scandal and all that, and said white men can't leave the D&D hobby soon enough. You know, he himself being a white man, he stayed on for another, year and a half or so. But now he's gone. He has finally fulfilled his own mission statement. Good for him. The only other thing that is apparently, it's rumored to be, that some people have reported that Jess Lanzillo is now his replacement. But that's not clear. Her title is different than his, but of course his was a very weird title because he was cited as executive producer of D&D. And Jess Lanzillo is something like marketing and concept director, vice president or something like that, right? I don't know if it's just that it's a replacement or if that's not a correct rumor. If it is Jess Lanzillo, it's not great news. You know, Lanzillo is very much on the activist side of things. Someone who was instrumental in, for example, last year, the year before, mentoring, which is to say probably that she did all the work while Sarah Chung took credit for it because Chung was Asian and LGBT, so that she was the visible face. This has become a pattern, by the way. It's we now know this. Mackenzie DeArma claims to have been the one that created the new deck of many things, but in point of fact, it appears like it was actually Jason Tondra that did all the heavy lifting, all the real work, all the design work, because Mackenzie Armas doesn't even play D&D, I think. She certainly doesn't understand how to write for it, right? So she was there as the visible face. Oh, look, the autistic woman of color, right? And he was the white guy is the one doing all the actual work, right? And I think that Lanzillo was something similar with like I said, about a year or two ago, Wizards of the Coast raised $1.3 million for the Trevor Project, which is essentially an LGBT teen advocacy leftist charity that engages in having a helpline for, to try to reach teens that are concerned they might be gay or trans or whatever, and then, tell them to leave their families and run away to one of their shelters and then get hormones or whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's all they do, but I'm sure that they would claim that they counsel people and so on and so forth, right? But anyways, it is very much that agenda, right? And she was instrumental apparently in putting that together, right? To the point that what was her name, Sarah Chung or whoever, cheered her for it, she actually gave her some of the credit and everything. So there must have been a big effort. So yeah, none of this is going to make things any better. I was cheering in the community post the fact that Kyle Brink is gone and the fact that, as I was sure would inevitably happen, normal gamers were going to outlive him, including the white male gamers that he had demanded leave the hobby. Now he's got to leave the hobby, right? I can't imagine a table that would want this asshole. But there we are. That is the end of him, and there's not much else for me to say about it right now, which is why I'm not going to continue on that track, and instead, I'm going to add something to my the last installment of my Baptism of Fire design notes, because I feel like I didn't go into quite enough detail of specifically what are like the new, because I talked about the miracles and magic, but I glossed over them all kind of equally. And I want to talk about what are specifically the things that are new in Baptism of Fire that are not present in the Lion and Dragon book, right? So let's go to page 56 here. Okay. So for starters, one of the biggest differences that has happened, as I've already pointed out, is that in Lion and Dragon, you had the cleric. In Baptism of Fire, I have switched that so that instead there are two different classes of religious person. There's the holy man, which is someone who is just like a holy man. He could be a monk, a priest, or a lay person who receives miracles from God because of his faith, right? And then there's the holy warrior. The holy warrior is the guy who goes out to defend the faith and fight against monsters and pagans and heretics. So each of them have their own set of miraculous powers. Most of the ones the holy man has are found in Lion and Dragon, with the exception of Dispel Sorceries, which essentially allows the holy man to cancel the effects of magic. It's, remove spell or something, remove magic or whatever. It's similar to that. And then you got the holy warriors. The holy warriors have a couple of things that are familiar, like holy light, holy weapon, and turn undead. And then the other ones are all new stuff, new powers. So Defender of the Faith gives him a bonus to armor class for a certain period of time, only against attacks from the enemies of the church. Divine Blow allows him to add his level and damage to any attack against enemies of the Christian faith. Grace of God allows him to essentially stave off death. It's a situation where if he's ever injured to the point of death, he does a saving throw. If he makes the save, he's miraculously restored to life and heals to the point of having 1 hit point. But he has to pray for this, and the time for which this special grace is granted is only 10 minutes per level. So he has to have done this. He has to do this basically right before a fight. So it's not just something that automatically happens. Protector of the Faithful is specifically a spell that draws enemies to him to attack him as a way to protect friends or innocents from being attacked. It's kind of the reverse of Sanctuary, where in Sanctuary, nobody can attack the holy man. In Protector of the Faithful, you have to go through the religious knight first. Okay. Then the divine intervention rules are as always. So then we've got, so the demon summoning is the same as in Lion and Dragon. Astrology, the same. Astrological talismans, the same. So as you can see, there is quite some overlap, because of course Lion and Dragon is about the magic of the medieval Europe, and this is magic of medieval Europe. There are going to be overlaps. Banishing is the same as well. I'll mention there's one of the magical skills of Lion and Dragon that is not here is alchemy, because alchemy was only being used. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and it wasn't really being used in barely out of the Dark Ages Poland, except maybe in some monasteries. So it's not something that a typical character would have had. Battle magic is the same. Cures are the same. And then we get to one of the different ones here is enchantment. So enchantment, characters who are players who are familiar with, or gamers, I guess, who are familiar with the RPG Pundit Presents series know that this is one of the magical abilities I had detailed in Pundit Presents. And it is the magic to alter people's minds. It is very much an older style of magic, a more tribal form of magic. It was not well looked upon in the Christian world. It was like, one of the things people get very confused about the relationship of medieval Christianity with magic is that not all magic was seen as a bad thing, right? There was some forms of magic that were just seen as kind of like science, right? Like they were just part of the natural philosophy. They were something that was understood to be real. Yes, of course. Yeah, you can summon angels to make some wondrous thing happen, right? You can bind demons to the authority of God. Obviously, I mean, geez, that's in the Bible and everything, right? So it's like, those things were not actually looked on as automatically evil. Now, of course, anyone who did any form of magic was going to be, and if people knew, was going to be very carefully observed and would be prone to potential judgment, either from overzealous authorities or from overly superstitious peasants and things like that, right? But there were certain types of magic that were really seen as very, very bad, right? And obviously any magic that was poisoning, cursing, those two were like the worst things, right? That was black magic. But so was enchantment, because enchantment is basically you're twisting the mind of a person, right? Like this is something that was seen as extremely dangerous, right? And it's also a magic that's associated with, like, in Western Europe at least, with like fairy creatures, right? Elf maids can enchant people, So anyways, this gives you like the power to enchant someone to either like confuse them, erase their memory, gain their favor, cause conflict, cause love, or just outright control them. Another new one is folk magic. I did not. There is folk magic, obviously, in the 15th century, also in the time of the Dark Albion and Lion and Dragon. But I didn't put it in the main book because my emphasis was on kind of the high magicians, and folk magic is a little less practical, let's say, for the adventurer. Though some of the ritual magic is really complicated or really expensive too. But anyways, I didn't have it in there, but I did later do, again, a Pundit Presents about it, and now I've incorporated it into the main book of Baptism of Fire, because obviously folk magic would be way more prevalent in 10th century Poland, right, or 11th century Poland. So there's a list here of 20 different types of folk magic rituals that a player character can learn. Some of them are really unusual. Some of them are kind of less practical than others. So you could use a type of a crystal that would allow you to then win a debate in a court. You can control a magic serpent, like a regular serpent. You make it magical with a spell, and then it goes and hunts down and kills someone who broke their oath. You can anoint some magic herbs, and like this one's a simple one, right? Anoint some magic herbs and try to figure out by it the diagnosis of whether someone is diseased or cursed and exactly how. You can do a spell to have perfect memory for a certain period of time, etc. Lots of good stuff there. Glamour magic, another new one. So this is similar to enchantment. Glamour was thought to be of a fairy magic, right? And it was a magic that was not really practiced by the high magicians of the kind of magister class that appears in Lion and Dragon. We don't have a magister class in Baptism of Fire. Again, we have the Witch Hunter, and we have the Skomrozni, and we have optionally the Pagan Magician, right? Those are the magic-using classes. But glamour is basically the power of creating illusions, so it lets you make light and darkness, an audible glamour, transformation, like you try to make one thing look like something different. concealment. That is basically the power of not being seen. You don't literally become invisible. Glamour works by making it so that you're just difficult for people to notice. Complex illusions, and then a glamour ward, which is a glamour that will activate under specific conditions. After that, we get to runes. And now some people might say, well, hang on. Runes are Viking, right? Yeah, but rune stuff is found all over northern Poland, right? Because here's the thing. Right around the time of Baptism of Fire, right around the time of the late 10th, early 11th century, most of Scandinavia had converted to Christianity. The holdouts that were still pagan had to therefore leave those kingdoms like Norway and Sweden, and they went off to other places. And of course, I think most people know that a lot of them went to Iceland, which stayed pagan for longer. But there was also perhaps a larger amount of people that went down to the Baltic Sea, to the pagan kingdoms that were all along the coast of the Baltic Sea that were not yet converted, right? And that included the Pomeranians in Poland, the Veleti in northern Germany, the Lithuanians, and they also went from there down into the mainland, where they worked often as mercenaries or sellswords or things like that, or bandits or raiders. They brought with them their magic, and in fact, they established an entire kind of city-state in the area of Pomerania in Poland that was called Jomsburg, which was one of the last holdouts of the pagan aristocracy of the Scandinavian people, of the Viking people. And rune magic was therefore known, and it was engaged in, it was practiced in this period. It wouldn't be after another 100 or 150 or 200 years from now. It would be gone, right? The reason that I don't have, for example, runes in Lion and Dragon is because nobody used runes by the 15th century. But in this time period, there was runes that were being used. And of course, it is seen as a pagan type of magic. But it is... It's still permissible for Christians to use it, as long as they're not using it in the context of the worship of any actual pagan gods, right? So this involves the techniques of runic divination, how to create rune charms, which are very minor kind of magic items, how to create bind runes, which are more complex ritual spells that have specific effects. So like, for example, Hola Stafur is a bind rune that will open the entrances to tombs and barrows, even if magically protected. You have to carve it on a staff of rowan wood, and the bind rune colored by blood from the magician's tongue. If it is successfully made, then any time a magician knocks 3 times on the entrance of a tomb or the hillside of a barrow, it'll open a passage in the ground to go through to the burial place. Now that is a badass ritual to have, right? Like, that is basically like a permanent knock spell in the form of a magic staff, right? So that's pretty cool. So there are, a number of these bind runes. And then we get to spirit magic. So spirit magic is my version, I want to make that quite clear, of the secret magical singing rites of the Skomrosny. So I had mentioned before, the Skomrosny are a class in Baptism of Fire. They are basically bards, right? Like, they are the closest thing, I think, in human history to the D&D bard class, which is a class that I thought had no cultural equivalent whatsoever, right? Because the bard class was a ridiculous mishmash. Like, in the first edition AD&D, the bard class shows up, and it's very clear that it's meant to represent, like, the bard of the ancient Celts, like the lore keeper guy. But then, and it was like a really difficult class to get into. And then in second edition, it's changed into what is basically a troubadour who also, for no good reason, has magic, right? So it's a guy that plays music, and, a minstrel or a troubadour, and he has magic powers and also thief skills, right? And, 2 out of 3 of those are possibly allowed, right? But it's like, but like medieval minstrels were not known as wizards, right? Like that just, it didn't make any sense to me ever. So I thought I would never have in a medieval authentic product a bard class. But the Skomrozni, when I started to research Poland in this period, turns out there were these guys. They were descended from some kind of pagan tradition, but they weren't really respected as like religious. They're probably religious singers at one point, right? But they weren't anymore by this time. The role had evolved into a purely for the purpose of kind of entertainment and alternative witchcraft, I guess you could say, right? Like alternative options to going to your local pagan priest, right? Because these guys were more specialist in stranger forms of magic, right? So the Skomrozni, they had a secret language. They did like songs that were very bawdy songs, but had double entendres. There are some very important similarities there to stuff like the troubadours that show up later in Western Europe. But they were also renowned to be magicians in the same. They had the kind of reputation of that gypsies would later also have, because there were no gypsies in Eastern Europe at this time. But they would have that kind of reputation in their own time, right? So there obviously is no record remaining of the specifics of the magic that Skomrozni did. But it does seem to be like, here's the thing. We know that Polish pagan magic was strongly based on the intonation of like these deep kind of vowel sounds and other what you could call root mantras, right? In a very similar way to what you see in like certain Indian tantric traditions. So it had to do with chanting, right? And obviously Skomrozni are musicians. Well, it probably has to do with chanting and with rhythm, and possibly with dancing, right? So I put all that together and generated. And I was partly inspired by what little is known about the Volchov shamans, and that basically like they are like shamans. They are invoking a spirit, and that spirit will give them a gift of magic if they perform it, right? So that is the Skomrozni spirit magic, which is unique to them as a class. So, okay, that's everything for this time. Next time, I'm going to talk a little bit, I guess, about economics in Baptism of Fire. I'm going to keep doing this. Please, if you like these kinds of videos, like this, where I'm doing design notes explaining about my game design, then which is also similar to reviews. These videos do not get as many views as most other videos do. So. If you can, if you like this and you're willing, please share it everywhere you can so that people will get a chance to find out about this stuff, to get the information. If you found it useful, spread the word, share the video, as I like to say in the comments. And besides that, I mean, obviously, if you want to pick up Baptism of Fire, you can find it on DTRPG. It is a gold bestseller. It's still, I think, in the top 8 of OSR products. I'm going to say 8. It's more than top 5, but it's not top 10 yet. It's done incredibly well, and so many people have loved it. And there's also now a couple of different source books out for it, because as of Tuesday, the latest issue of the Pundit Files in the Red Room store is the Pundit Files number 16, which is, I think, called the World Oak or something like that. It's the planar cosmology of the world of Baptism of Fire, of the Polish. It's the Polish version of Yggdrasil, basically. The Slavs had the same concept that the Germanics had of a world tree, but the worlds are different, obviously. It's not like Alfheim and Niflheim and Asgard and that sort of thing. It's the different worlds of the pagan gods, the two different kind of underworlds of kind of the nice one and the bad one. There's a lot of nice and bad stuff. The world of the good fairies and the world of the bad fairies. And all of this surrounds the magic of the white stone, and having all of this having been Christianized in Slavic lore, There's also even the possibility for your player characters to quest up the world tree to the vision of heaven itself. So all of that is available in the latest issue of the Pundit Files. It's the second one that is derived from Baptism of Fire. The first one was the City Guide to Poznan, which you can also still find on the Red Room store. Either one of those will only cost you $3.50. Okay, so just find someone to give you $3.50, and then you can buy the issue of the Pundit Files, and we'll all be happy. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And thank you very much, everyone. Currently smoking, well, not really, I haven't lit it yet. I'm about to start smoking it. Lorenzetti Half Volcano plus Argento Roots. That's it.